live. Hi everyone, it is a pleasure to have you here today for a informational webinar about the request for information that the Alaska Sustainable Energy Corporation has released, and we hope that you will find this informational. So we'll, in this half hour, go quickly through who we are as an organization, that is the Alaska Sustainable Energy Corporation. We'll go through the overview of the request for information, the different components to it, and then I will bounce to the live form so that you can get a sense for what the form looks like, the different pieces of it, so that especially if you're not technologically savvy, you will know exactly what to look for and what to expect. And then we will go into questions as time allows. So starting off with who we are. Last year, HB 273 passed the Alaska State Legislature, and Governor Dunleavy signed into law a act authorizing the Alaska Housing Finance Corporation, AHFC, to create a subsidiary organization to finance or support the financing of sustainable energy developments in the state of Alaska. And that is where the Alaska Sustainable Energy Corporation, to say it shortly, ASEC, not to be confused with the conference, was created and incorporated in November 2024 incorporated as a nonprofit subsidiary of AHFC. And our purpose, as I mentioned, is to finance or facilitate the financing of sustainable energy developments or projects delivering energy to the state of Alaska, with a particular focus and priority on energy efficiency and renewable energy for residential buildings, commercial buildings, and community facilities in Alaska. And I am based in Anchorage, Alaska, land of the Dena'ina Athabascans. So defining sustainable energy projects is very well listed out in Alaska State Statute 18.56.900. So if you ever have any doubts, you can go to the state statutes, state legislation to see exactly what we're talking about. And just want to highlight a few key pieces here because they do relate to the request for information that we have out, as we're seeking projects specifically for each one of these buckets to be able to understand what kind of projects are existing or want to exist in Alaska related to these. So the first one is building energy efficiency. The second one is renewable energy generation from sources that are continually replenished by nature. For example, sun, wind, water, biological processes. Third category is electrical infrastructure, which can incorporate energy storage as well as sustainable energy distribution, sustainable technologies, including distributed generation, advanced battery and combined heat power, and then many elements related to clean transportation, including electrical vehicles, plug-in hybrids, zero-emission vehicles, as well as EV charging and fueling infrastructure. And then very broadly, any greenhouse gas emissions reduction, energy efficiency, or zero emission technology that is approved by us. And a lot of these technologies and clarification or specific technologies and projects will be defined depending on what programs we run. But this is the broad umbrella as to what you might expect that ASEC would be financing, the types of projects that we would finance. Some of you might have heard the term Green Bank, and that was the leading name for the corporation as it was going through the legislature, for those that were familiar. And the concept of a green bank is that it is connecting capital, an entity is connecting capital with project demand for projects that are not being financed by private markets without any additional de-risking to it. So typically you will see green banks focusing on accelerating sustainable energy projects, providing financing, improving access to such projects, bringing together an element of public financing with private sector financing so that financing can then be more affordable to either the individual or the entity that is looking to bring these projects to market, and might eventually reduce the cost of energy. Green banks are also meant to mitigate the risk and the structure of transactions that might catalyze private investment, and they might use innovative financing tools such as loans, equity investments, green bonds, loan guarantees, loan loss reserves for the financial folks in this webinar. And we might also be able to bridge a barrier between capital providers, typically national capital providers who might not understand the Alaska market, and bring them opportunities that are here in our home state that they might want to finance, but just haven't been able to access these types of projects in the past because they haven't had a local partner that they can rely on to answer questions about how we might do things differently here in Alaska. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of background so that we can now go into specifically this request for information, RFI, what we're looking for and what we're hoping to see from folks who apply or more accurately submit a piece of information to our form. First off, sharing a disclaimer that this RFI is only for information gathering purposes, and there is no solicitation or obligation for funding from this RFI. Later down the line, if we were able to provide financing and funding, we would have a separate process that would help ASEC identify projects eligible for funding. And at that point in time, we will release additional information through our communication channels. And in the RFI submission, there is a portion for you to agree to receive our newsletters so that you would receive future information, future contact from us with such RFPs or RFQs as might come out. So what are we hoping to hear from this RFI? Broadly speaking, we're looking to understand different project types that exist in our state and seeing from your organizations or organizations that you might work with and partner with, what kind of projects are either happening and are looking for additional capital or are desired to happen. And we know in particular that there are a lot of projects that might have received federal funding that has been on pause or is uncertain. And so those are the types of projects across the different project types that we are looking at, that is in our remit. We are looking to understand what projects are happening in the state. Also trying to understand project readiness associated with these and trying to understand what financing needs and gaps there are, what the expected timelines for implementation might be, understanding that Alaska has a very unique construction season compared to other locations. So that definitely looks different than, say, California, where they don't have to worry about barge schedules coming for this summertime. And then understanding what the potential community and economic benefits are for these projects. And since we are a financial institution, we are interested in understanding what risk appetite, what interest rates, and other types of loan products or financial products are being, folks are interested in for these types of projects. For example, we know that in real estate projects in particular, you might have a certain amount of funding in your capital stack that is reserved for equity investments and equity investors, and then a certain amount that is for loan and debt products. And you might even have a bucket for grants that you might be looking at. And so understanding what folks are looking to fill and complete these projects, because we know that that looks very different from one entity to another. And Pretty much as it relates to who's eligible to fill out this form, pretty much anyone that is doing a project in Alaska. These are just examples of folks that we would like to hear from, but certainly not limited to this list here and in the RFI document. So all the way from individuals, homeowners that may want to finance solar on their homes or battery storage, or might have other ideas, as homeowners might want to get closer to net zero and reduce their energy costs, all the way to large institutions, large commercial developers and entities that are having megawatts of projects that they're bringing online and looking additional dollars to fill up their capital stack. And pretty much anyone related to these projects can fill the form. It doesn't need to be the project developer themselves. It can be a local entity, local government, or local tribal entity that is familiar with the project, that has the approval from the project developer to submit to this RFI. We would be very happy to hear from them. If we see duplicates, we'll be able to deduplicate on our end. I don't expect that there would be too much complication there. And in terms of timelines, so we released the RFI last Monday. We are now officially at the informational webinar. Tomorrow is our first office hour, which will then be repeated Tuesday of next week. And this is an informal time for you to ask questions and see perhaps is your project a fit or not for this? Do you have the right information or not? Is there something about the form that isn't clear? We're absolutely all ears. Questions that are answered during the office hours will be published into an FAQ that will be posted alongside the RFI itself, so that folks can see what's been asked in the past and see if they have any further questions that they are looking to have answered. So those office hours hopefully make it easier for you to get in touch with me and be able to ask those questions, and there is no such thing as a stupid question, so please bring them along. The other dates to note are that we do ask that all questions be submitted by June 19th, which I realize is Thursday, not Friday, by close of business Alaska time. So please submit these by Thursday, June 19th at 5 p.m. so that we can gather all those, publish the FAQ, so that folks can see the FAQs by the submission deadline of this RFI, which is Monday, June 23rd at 5 p.m. Alaska time. That's when we would like to have all responses. Now, if you need a little bit of extra time that evening, completely understand, please let us know. We will be happy to accommodate that. And so that it is extra clear, we have an online form for submitting of questions, which I will go through in a moment. And we also have a separate and related online form for the RFI responses themselves. And if you have any technical issues, either with the form, frankly, any aspect of it, please do email us at this email address, info@aksustainableenergycorp.us, so that we might be able to assist you and help you get through it. And a few terms and conditions that do apply to this RFI. The first one is that any submissions to the form are considered public records by the state of Alaska laws. So if there is any information that is confidential that you're submitting, please be very explicit about that. There is an optional attachment upload in the form, so you can mark that the information is confidential as is applicable. We want to respect all information possible that folks are submitting and very conscious of that. The second item is about incurring costs. This request for information is very much just informative, and we don't intend for this to be an extensive process where you need to receive bids and contract any work for it. So if we hope that the information will be complete enough that we receive, However, if you do incur any costs, we are not liable for those costs because this RFI is meant to be informative. And finally, we greatly appreciate any spreading of the word of this RFI. Please let us know ahead of time before you publish it. We just want to be aware of where the information is going because we want to be able to track where folks are coming from, which will be very helpful for us as we grow this organization. And so you can use that same email address that I mentioned before, info@aksustainableenergycorp.us, to be able to reach us and get that approval. All right, now for the fun stuff and being able to see it live. So first of all, I hope that folks have been able to go to our RFI webpage, and I will post it in the chat so that folks can have it at the ready. From here, this link here will take you to a PDF of the request for information so that you can have all the information here. It is similar information, if not exactly the same, as to what we have gathered and talked about on this call. And most notably, you will see links in the timeline and the submission guidelines to be able to submit as well as register for office hours in a similar fashion that you did for today's webinar. So focusing on the RFI itself, here is the link to the submission form. I will quickly jump to the bottom of the form and show that there is a save button down here so that if you need to come back to it at a later time, you could even share your unique link with someone else if you're trying to collaborate. You'll see there's a bunch of mumbo jumbo at the end of the URL, so you can, this is unique to you. Enter your email address and you will be able to send that link to yourself and get it in your email. I highly recommend that folks do that regardless of whether they know that they're doing it in one swoop or not, just to be sure. So now that we know how to save, we go back to the top of the form, standard contact information here. We're particularly interested in where folks are submitting from so that we have a better understanding of where in the state and what diversity we have. And then information about the project location and a quick description so that when we look at the submissions, we get a quick idea of which projects are which. There's possibility for more information later on in the form, but this is just your summary synopsis here. About the project itself, that's where it starts getting nitty-gritty. We are curious if this is a project or a portfolio of projects. So for example, if you were having residential solar installed on a whole neighborhood, every solar system is exactly the same, say 5 kilowatts, 4 kilowatts, then no need to fill out a form for every one of these projects. You can simply just put it in for the portfolio. We're curious to know which categories we mentioned it falls under. And there is a smart system, smart validation in place for these, and I will go through it in a minute. I'll go through this form once and then come back to the project category, because depending on which option you choose here, there will be a separate section that shows up for this type of category specifically. We'd like to know what type of entity owns the project, and that will help us because public facilities have different requirements and different approval processes than private commercial properties, for example. And we do want to hear from a variety of projects across the state. Standard start, end date, where we'd like to know an estimate of the project or portfolio cost. If you're unsure of a number or you have a range, please put the maximum number in there so that we have a sense of what the maximum amount you might be asking for. And we do ask separately for the amount of funding you're seeking separately from the estimated total project cost, because we know that in some cases you might have some costs already covered. You might have grants that you can still access and have access to. And so we want to get that sense of what percentage of the project are you looking for financing still. And then, as I mentioned about understanding what type of investment and financing you're looking for, this is where that falls, whether it's equity, whether you're looking for credit enhancement, debt, junior or senior. If you don't know what type of financing you're looking for, this is an optional question. The mandatory questions are marked with a red star, so you should be able to know pretty fast which ones are the ones that we need. And then if you have ideas, or if you know exactly what other types of funding you secured or are seeking, please list these here. That will give us a better picture. We have a few questions about the project's impact as it relates to greenhouse gas emissions, low-income disadvantaged communities, etc., just so that we can understand a bit more about your project. Some more specific questions about emission reductions, if you know this information. Understanding what stage of the project has been completed, and then understanding if it's paused, why is it not moving forward? And then any additional information that you want to share with us, we are all ears. Optional attachments for energy audits or surveys that you might have done, contractor scopes or estimates, project timelines, project scopes, whatever you might have. And finally, agreeing to our terms and conditions, as I mentioned, the incurring of costs, the public records, and the news release. So just understanding and making sure that we're all on the same page here. Going back to the project category up here under portion 3. So as I mentioned, if you click on any one of these, you will see a new section show up. And in this case, building project specifics right here. So understanding if this is commercial and industrial, multifamily, residential, estimated square footage, and if this is a portfolio of projects, the number of buildings. If this is a distributed energy project, what type of project is it? What size is it? And then finally, if this is clean transportation related, what exactly is it related to? If it's EV chargers, how many, etc. And I'll quickly mention the other category doesn't have any boxes, additional boxes associated with it. It is simply there, and if we didn't catch the right categories for you, and in which case we would just look at this number 4 section for you to describe what the project might look like. As I mentioned, we have a form for questions. Here it is, and this might be, we haven't captured the right information, you have a general question, you need help with submitting it, you have an idea that's not project specific, but you think might fall under our remit, something else entirely, you submitted, now what? We are very open to all of those pieces and would look forward to hearing from you on those. And at this point, let me go back, there we go. And that concludes our presentation here. You're welcome to take a screenshot of this slide so that you can go back to it. Oh. And I will put the link, I put the link to the RFI in the chat, and we'll put the link to the form itself, as well as our email address. And as I mentioned, tomorrow is the first day of office hours that we're hosting. I hope that some of you will join as well, so that We can talk a little bit more about your own project. And with that, we have 4 minutes, and I can stay on a little extra if anyone has questions that they want to ask live. And if so, please unmute yourself, and if you'll say your name and your organization, happy to hear the questions now. Thank you. Hopefully this information was all helpful and informative for folks. And I know that there are a lot of community organizations that are on the call, so would love for you to share this information with folks that you think might have projects or be interested in this and connecting, since there's a lot going on in Alaska in different ways, and certainly hope that folks will be able to help us spread the word, since there are a lot of people to connect with in this state doing a lot of great work.